Hi everybody, Jeff here. Hey, today I want to talk to you about the difference between unmodified thinset mortars and polymer modified thinset mortars. And also, sort of the science between it, because you don't just go to the store and grab any old bag of mortar and throw it down and expect it to work. And in some cases, it may actually be damaging to your install and it could cause failure before long. So anyway, if you're going to be doing tiling for maybe for a living, or you're thinking of seriously getting into doing it, you probably want to get yourself this here. So this is the Tile Council of North America's handbook for ceramic glass and tile installation. And in it, it has just all the procedures, the recommended procedures based on time-tested installations from experts and scientists in the field. And this book is a great guide to keep you from doing things that you shouldn't be doing. And so, for example, there's a whole section in here that says here ceramic and glass installation methods here. So what this does is it has several different scenarios, whether you're applying tile over wood floors or directly onto concrete, or if you're inside or outside or on a wall, and it has all of the proper procedures you're supposed to follow. Now this other book here is the the ANSI Standards. And this book here will kind of define for you the requirements for all of these different bags of mortars that you see here. So that when you see them and you see the ANSI number that's on them, you'll know exactly what it's for and what it's doing. And I'm sort of an engineering kind of guy, so I always look at specs whenever I do something. Oh, what's the ANSI spec say? What does that spec say? So this might kind of bore the rest of you guys, because really all it has in here is a bunch of technical jargon and test methods and all that. But it does show on there numerically what makes one particular thinset better than another one, and for a specific purpose. For example, some thinsets you can't use in a commercial environment. They have much more stringent requirements than in a residential setting. So anyway, we're going to go through all of these bags of thinset here and describe to you what's the difference between them. When should you use an unmodified thinset? When should you use a modified thinset? And I actually do not have a bag of unmodified with me, so we're going to take a real quick trip over to Home Depot there, and I'm going to show you the bag in stock there. So here we are in the store here, and we've got a bag here of, this is what we call plain Jane unmodified thinset, and it's very hard to find it, but this is how you tell right here. See how it says exceeds ANSI A118.1? That means it's an unmodified thinset. And so if you're ever going to have to attach like for example Schluter Kerdi membrane, you have to use this type here. The only thing that I'm worried about is the price of this is real cheap, so it's probably not the highest quality, although it does say here that it exceeds ANSI standards, so maybe it is okay. Today we're starting a new day of tiling soon, and I wanted to take a step back for a moment and just kind of review all the different types of thinset you might come across, and why is it so important to choose the right thinset for your job. And I can tell you I've seen many tile jobs over the years that have failed simply because the person who did the install put the wrong bag of thinset, or they tiled down onto a substrate that they had no business tiling down to. Believe it or not, there really is a science and engineering to all of this. You don't just go into the store, grab a bag of thinset and think, okay, that's the one I'm going with, and let's go. So yeah, I've seen people make mistakes and tile directly onto plywood flooring, or even worse, onto the OSB, which is oriented strand board. Those are the flooring panels that are made out of little chunks of wood that are all pressed together. And the reason why you don't want to tile directly onto a wood substrate, like on the second floor of your house, is A, there's too much flex. B, the wood tends to suck the moisture right out of your thinset, and so the thinset mortar won't cure properly. And what I suggest you do is you either lay down some cementitious type panels like Hardy backer board, or Wonder board, any of those are things that would lay down over the wood floor and would make it stiffer, and then you could tile onto that. Or even better, you can use like the Schluter's Ditra which helps you isolate from a shaky floor to the tile. But either case, no matter what you do, you got to make sure you're using the right type of thinset. And you're going to hear a lot of people talk about unmodified thinset or modified thinset, and which one do I use? What is the difference? What do those mean? So we're going to answer those questions here for you today. I wanted to start off by showing you, for example, there's different standards that are used to determine the characteristics of your thinsets. And here in the US, they're broken down with what we call these ANSI levels here. So I got this printout here from Mappy that shows the different ANSI levels here. So you can see there's an A118.4 at the top there. It's a latex modified Portland cement mortar. And then there's a A118.15.15. That's an improved latex modified thinset mortar, and that would be like your premium. That's the best of the best. And then below that is a 118.11, and that's a cement mortar that's made for putting it onto plywood. So they do make a mortar that allows you to tile onto plywood. So if you look at these ANSI standards, this 118.4.11 and .15, you can think of those as like when you're standing in Home Depot looking at the paint rollers and which ones do I want to get. You have good, better, and best. And then there's a, within the A118.15, you can see here they have some characteristics associated with that. So the F at the end of it, right there, would be fast setting. And then there's an E for extended open time. And then the T, which is the one I always look for, is a non-sag formula. And what this means is, and we'll be going over this more in a minute, but it just means it's for larger format tiles that are heavier so that they don't sink when you put them into the thinset mortar. There's also another one called 118.1, which is the unmodified thinset. So the difference between an unmodified thinset and a modified thinset is there is a polymer. So let me just show you quickly this bag. So this right here says it's a tile mortar with polymer, and they're usually a latex polymer that's built in here. So all you have to do is mix this bag with water and you're fine. It will be the chemical consistency that the manufacturer wants. If you're using an unmodified bag of thinset, it will not have these polymers in there. Okay, so you're probably wondering, well, when do I want to use unmodified? Why would I want to use unmodified if this polymers are better? This sounds like it's better because look, this is good for tile and stone here, and it says also good bond over plywood. That's how I know I would be able to use this one over plywood, because it specifically says good bond over plywood. Okay. So now I just want to direct your attention to this little label on the bag here. So I always look for confirmation. I don't just look where they say, okay, yeah, you can use it over plywood. I want to know, does the ANSI standard back that up? So I look over here, and it says right here on the bag here, see it right there? Meets or exceeds ANSI standard A118.4, which we already know is for a basic latex modified thinset, and A118.11. And .11, as you remember, that's the one we were just talking about a minute ago. That says right there, it's for exterior glue plywood. So that's how I know I can use this one over plywood, and I could be confident that this will be okay in this case. Okay, so how does that apply to this installation that we're going to do here? So here you can see we're sort of in the process of putting up our Schluter Kerdi boards here that we're going to be using as our waterproof substrate, because see, these boards here are very lightweight, they're easy to use, and there's a fleece, a waterproof fleece that's already attached to it here. So these are the boards we're going to be using, and then we seal up all the seams with the Kerdi band. Now the thing is, Schluter specifies an unmodified thinset to be used on this product. Why does it have to be unmodified? And that has to do with the way that the thinset cures. So if I was to use this bag right here of this modified thinset, even though that's a really good product, it would void my warranty with Schluter if I used it here on here, because it has a polymer modified thinset. And so what happens is this type of thinset here needs what we call an evaporative type of curing. And a full cure on it would theoretically take about 28 days. Because you're putting this thinset up against a waterproofed type backing here. There's nowhere for it to go, nowhere for the thing to evaporate. And you're putting an impervious tile up against it. So you're trapping the thinset in there. How's it going to dry and cure if it's polymer? You'd have to let this thing sit here for a month before you could grout the tile. Well, nobody's going to do that. So if you were to just blindly grab this bag off the shelf and put your tiles onto this wall, it's going to fail at some time in the future. And that's where a lot of tilers make a mistake, because they don't understand the basic difference between unmodified thinset and a modified thinset. Now, the unmodified thinset does better in a situation like this, where you have the impervious waterproofing membrane with the impervious tile up against it. It will cure better with moisture in the thinset. So, many times over the years, if you watch any of those shows like Mike Holmes or what's the other one I think of, Rescue My Renovation, a lot of times those guys will be called in and you'll see that the person had the best intentions, and they used like Schluter Ditra on the floor, but they laid it over plywood and they used a modified thinset, and 6 months later the thing's still not cured because the moisture's trapped in there, and the whole entire installation failed on them. So you could use the best of products here, but if you use the wrong thinset, even though that's a high quality thinset, you will void your warranty. So I hope this explains it perfectly for you, why we use an unmodified thinset on here. Okay, so now I want to review the next bag of thinset mortar that I use a lot too. And I like this one here, and this is Ultraflex LFT, and the LFT stands for Large Format Tile. Well, so here's one of my tiles that we're going to be using. And you're probably wondering, what defines a large format tile? Well, this is a 12-inch by 24-inch tile. And according to the Tile Council of North America, any tile that has a dimension greater than 12 inches is considered a large format tile. That's this one. If you had a 13 by 13 tile, that would be considered large format. If you had a 15 by 15, that's considered large format. And normally, now this is a cheapy ceramic tile here. Normally, I like on floors, I love to use travertine. They're 18-inch by 18-inch, and they're a ½ inch thick, and they weigh a ton. And when you back butter them, they weigh even more. So when you set them down in your thinset mortar, they're going to sink, and that's how you get lippage a lot. You'll see I'm going to take you into the kitchen for 1 second and show you this lippage. So here we are in the kitchen here, right? And this is what happens when you're a moron and you lay a tile down into your thinset and it sinks because it's probably too heavy. Although this is only a half tile, right? How do you get that much lippage? That's almost 1/4 inch of lippage there. And because there was so much lippage, we had to, on the bottom of this baseboard, we have to caulk to make up for that gap because of the difference in lippage. Because this tile is up at this point, but it's down at that point compared to the rest of the floor. So we're going to have to come in and do a second layer of caulk over this first layer, because that was a 1/4 inch gap. So the second layer that we're going to do will cover up the little parts that wouldn't quite fill in. But that's what the problem you're left with when you're using the wrong type of thinset and your tiles sag in it. So here we are back at our bag here, and had the installer used a thinset like this, his tiles wouldn't have sunk like that. And had he used a tile leveling system like we use, his tiles would have been perfectly fine. You should be able to lay a 1/4 down on the floor and slide it across the floor, and it should go all the way to the other end without snagging on any of the grout lines. So this is a large format tile with polymer, and it's a non-sag for heavy tile and stone and easy troweling. And what I like about this stuff, they call it their Easy Glide technology. It's like whipped cream when you're troweling it on. Oh, it's beautiful. So what are the ANSI standards on this one? Well, this one here, you can see it says A118.4 and A118.11. So it's kind of interesting that they say it's made for LFT, but it's not really specifying it on here on the ANSI standard. But this is a good thin set, and we've used it numerous times on the floors. And as good as this one is, and let's compare the price. So this is about a $14 thin set. This is about $25. And as good as this one is, and this is considered premium thin set, this here would fail if we used it here on the Schluter board. And it would void the warranty if they saw us using it on there. So we can't use this product because it's a modified thin set as well. So there's, like I mentioned before, that one other standard in here, the A118.15, would be even a more premium version of something like this. And in there, they do have the specification for, right there, remember that A118.15T, see the T at the end, which specifies non-sag formula. So this one here is pretty much almost like that. So that would probably be about a $30 bag if it had that A118.5. So now that we've defined all of these types of thin sets, you got to remember not to use these whenever you're using any of the Schluter Kerdi band or the Kerdi roll when you're rolling it up the wall, or if you're using the Kerdi panels or on the Ditra. The problem is if you go to the store to buy thin set, unmodified thin set, you're going to be looking at bags that are $5 a bag up to $15 a bag. Don't buy the cheapy $5 ones. Get the ones that are closer to 15. They're usually much higher quality. Now let me throw a monkey wrench into the works here for you, because what we're going to use here on this product, on this tile installation, is a new product that Schluter came out with here. And it's a thin set here. And the one that I'm going to use here is called Schluter AllSet. But you might notice something funny about this. You go, look at this. Hey, this is specialized modified mortar. Wait a minute, this is a modified thin set. It says it right there, right? Modified thin set. So now you're probably really confused and you're going, wait a minute, Jeff, you just went on this whole soliloquy telling us not to use a modified thin set. Why are you now using this Schluter modified thin set on your tile installation there? Well, the reason we can get away with it is Schluter has entire control over the entire process. They know which modifiers they can put into this formula that will work specifically for their product. It's an engineered thin set that works directly with their product. And it works on Ditra, it works on the Kerdi panel. So because they control it, they can do this. And it says right on there, it says engineered for use both over and under Ditra and Kerdi products. So, and it also says on this, sag resistant, suitable for large and heavy tile applications. So this sounds to me like it's, the best of both worlds. So here we go. I'm going to show you this other bag of it. If you look here, it says here that this meets or exceeds the ANSI A118.4, .11, and .15. So this makes this a really super high-end premium type of mortar, because it handles, this 118.15 standard is an improved polymer modified thin set standard here. And you notice how it has the T. That's your confirmation that this will work with, it's a no sag that is made for large format tiles. So this to me is the best of the best. This is probably going to be the best bag of mortar we've ever used in tile. So we'll find out. This is fairly new. It just came out this year. And we have a pretty good confidence that we're going to get a great installation from this. So I would imagine you could use this on just about anything. Any kind of tile installation that you want to do. And the other thing you always want to do to avoid screwing things up, you could buy the best mortar and everything and still screw it up by not mixing it properly. I just want to show you, most manufacturers show you very clearly what they want you to do. And this is pretty similar amongst most of them. They usually want you to use 5.5 to 6 quarts of water. You dump it in the bucket first. You never put the powder in first, otherwise you're going to get clumps if you put the water on top of the powder. Water always goes in first. Powder gets added. You stir it up, and this is the part you always want to pay attention to. See how it says right there? 300 RPMs. They don't want you to whip it up at high speed because it's like whipping up egg whites, you know, and you get all the air and fluffiness in there. Then when you set your tile in it, the tile sinks, so you don't want to do that. And then you have to let it slake for 10 minutes. And then after 10 minutes is done, that's when it's all the chemical reactions are completing. And then after that, you stir it for another 3 minutes, and then you're ready to go. But most of your manufacturers have these instructions on the back, and you have to very, very carefully make sure you're adhering to all of those instructions, okay? And then I just wanted to quickly show you the grout that we're going to use. I always like to use a sanded grout whenever possible. So anytime I have a grout line that's 1/8 of an inch or more, you can use sanded grout. Now, some people are erroneously under the impression, oh, if I have an 1/8 inch, I can't use a sanded grout. You can. You can go either way when you're using an 1/8 of an inch grout line. You can either use an unsanded grout or you can use a sanded grout. Not a problem. I've even seen an installer do sanded grout on a 1/16 inch grout line, which was cool. He was able to get it in there and get it in there to fit. I prefer to use a sanded grout because you have more strength because of the sand particles, and I think you have more resistance to water penetration too. And as you can see, they'll tell you on the bag what you can use it on: porcelain, ceramic, glass. Be careful when you're using it on glass so you don't scratch it. You want to wipe it off gently. So this can be used on just about anything here. So I know this was a lengthy discussion here today, but it's very important information that you have to know all of that. So just spending this 15 minutes or so on this, hopefully we cleared this up for you, and now you're ready to get out there and start tiling with the proper thinset mortar. Alright, so lastly, I just want to direct your attention to these little hieroglyphic drawings that you'll see on the back of most of your thinset bags. And this is important information because this confirms whether or not you can use this thinset in the area that you want to use it. So for example, here's the residential setting. And so here there's 3 arrows showing you that you can use it inside or outside. So that's interior or exterior. And this arrow over here is indicating that you can use it on the floor. The middle arrow is indicating that you can use it on a bench. And the upper arrow is pointing to the wall. So that means you can tile up the wall with these tiles. If you're on an appropriate substrate, of course. And then they're showing you can use it exterior as well as the floor or on a wall outside of a house. And then they're showing commercial applications here as well. And it's pretty similar here with the commercial. Exterior, though, if you'll notice, it's only showing that you can use it on the ground. They're not showing that for commercial purposes, that you can use this bag of thinset on a wall outside. So you have to be careful. You have to know your application and where you're using this thinset and know where you can mount it. And so now here you can see inside you're allowed to use it on the floor or on a wall with an appropriate substrate going up the wall, of course. So, you know, there's a lot of information on these bags that you really need to pay attention to, in addition to the ANSI standards. So anyway, I hope this clears it all up for you, and check our channel here for many more helpful videos in your construction projects. And if you like what you see, please subscribe to our channel. Thanks. Have a great day.